I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. So even though we're a small group, and if you'd like, you don't have to. If you want to unmute yourselves, this can be a little bit more interactive. If you want to turn on your camera, you can. You don't have to by any means. But let me just go ahead and start by introducing myself. So, good afternoon. My name is Verónica Hirsch. I'm Annamarie. For my mother, I'm Chiricahua Apache, and I serve as the Career Readiness and Employment Tribal College and University Program Officer at the American Indian College Fund. And I'm so happy to be able to chat with both of you. Since we're such a small group, I don't want it to be a super formal situation. So I'm going to ask both of you, please feel free to use the chat if you have any questions. You can also feel free to unmute yourself. You can interrupt me, if I'm going on a tangent, and ask questions that way as well. But with that being said, I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I am going to go ahead and put up a few of the slides because I think they can be helpful for us. But I want to start off with this idea of what it means to begin a professional journey. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And thank you for your patience as I do that. So with this idea of a professional journey in mind, I'd like to get your gut reaction to what does that even mean and why do we care about it? So here is, again, our session. And this is the question that I have. This is the little interactive portion. So hopefully you have your smartphone handy. If you could please, think about what is your gut reaction to the words professional journey? What does that evoke in you? What comes to mind? It could be an emotion, it could be a color, it could be a phrase, it could be a word, it could be a person, it could be a name. What is your gut response when you hear this phrase, professional journey? So if you have a smartphone handy, if you can go to this website, menti.com, and go ahead and type in this code, I'd like us to take a few moments just to reflect. What does it mean when you hear that phrase, professional journey? What comes to mind for you? Let's go ahead and take a few moments to think about that.
Hi, Veronica. I'm on my phone and
Yeah.
I have, what is your gut reaction to the words professional?
Yes, professional journey. What comes to mind?
Okay, I'm sorry. It just the slide just switched. All right, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. So again, what comes to mind when you hear that? Your gut reaction to the word professional journey. I'll take just another moment or so. And you might have more than one reaction. Like I said, it could be a color, it could be a person, it could be, a specific person that you might have in mind. It could be a company. It could be a movie, a song, whatever the case may be. What comes to mind when you hear this phrase? What is your gut reaction to the words professional journey? So I see we have a few responses, and I like this color blue. That's great. We have motivation, information, inspiration, growing, career readiness. This is great. So I would like you to think about this, bear this in mind as we have this conversation about professional journeys and what exactly that means. I actually want to go ahead and share the screen that I'm looking at so that you can see what I see. And so these are the responses that everybody was able to provide so far. So thank you. Thank you so much for considering, your gut reaction when you hear this phrase, professional journey. As I said, we have 6 really great responses. And I'd like you to keep these in mind, as we talk about what this all means in the context of a career readiness and employment. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation that I want to share with all of you. And so one of the things that I'd like to offer to all of you who are participating right now, as you think about, your gut reaction to this idea of professional journey, that a journey also always starts someplace. It always has a beginning. And so much like regardless whatever tribe we come from, we always know that we start at the beginning. And even our keynote presenter mentioned that we start at creation. And so one of the things I'd like to invite you to consider as you're thinking about your gut response to professional journey is how you might consider that as a type of ceremony. And how a professional journey, when it starts at the beginning, starts at creation, that an interview is just part of that professional journey. And in fact, the entire interview process, anything from going to school to earning a credential or a degree, to finding out who is hiring and where, what type of employment vacancies are available, what type of job you want. Maybe you're going to school specifically for a specific type of job that you would like. And even why you want that type of job. Is that your dream job? Is that a job that you're thinking, well, it's useful for now until maybe I do get my dream job? Is your decision to go for that particular type of employment, is that motivated by other things? Maybe you have other responsibilities. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a spouse, maybe you're a caregiver for someone or, something. So as you consider all these things that go into this aspect of professional journey, I'd invite you to treat that process with the same type of respect, that same type of seriousness, and that same type of contemplation as you would, let's say, if you were participating in a ceremony. And I'm also including this particular question, again, for us to ask ourselves and to think about, what is my origin story? And one of the reasons I ask that, if you like, DC, Marvel comics, all the universe, everybody has that origin story, a backstory of why they're, a good guy or a bad guy. In this case, it's more so, we're going to assume all of us are good guys. I'd like you to consider what has gotten you to the point where you are today, even this afternoon, why you've chosen to take time out of your weekend to listen to some of these things that we're offering to you during this virtual conference. What is your origin story? Who has helped shape it? Did you have specific experiences, specific challenges? Were you encouraged by somebody who matters to you? Maybe you have a loved one who said, I think you'd be really good at whatever. And you said, maybe you're right. And I value you and I appreciate you and I love you. And if you're saying you think I'd be good at that, well, maybe I would. What is your origin story? What has set you on this professional journey at the creation of your journey? What is that? How does that relate? The other thing I'd like us to consider is to ask ourselves, how can we be good relatives and specifically good professional relatives? We heard even from our keynote how vitally important kinship is. Regardless of our tribal tradition, the understanding that we are interconnected and we are related. And because we are interconnected and related, we have responsibilities to each other. And so we hear this phrase a lot, be a good relative. We're told, be a good relative. This is how you behave like a good relative. This is what a good relative does or looks like. Well, what does that mean in a professional context as part of your professional journey? How can I show up and become a good professional relative? And then as part of that professional journey, it's not at the end. I think this is something that we can ask ourselves throughout, at the beginning, at the middle, and even towards the end. I'm 49, I'll be 50 at the end of this year in December. So my professional journey, I have about 30 years of a professional journey that I've been on. And so one of the questions that I ask myself, I continue to ask myself is, what is the type of legacy I want to leave? How do I want to be remembered as a professional relative? How do I want to choose to be helpful to my colleagues in my workplace? In what ways can we collaborate and work together so that we can all succeed and we can all feel fulfilled? How do I want to create a working environment and show up as a good relative so that I create space for my colleagues to show up as good relatives in their own way? So again, I want to offer this to you because I think sometimes when we think about this idea of professional journey and everything that is part of it, it can feel very sterile. It can feel maybe very artificial. But I think if we relate it to who we are just as individuals, as human beings, even as we relate it to our own value systems, our value systems might be shaped by our specific tribal traditions, where we grew up, who was important to us. Maybe who told us that they thought we would be good at something. I think this is all a way that we can make this process even more significant and more intentional. And hopefully we can find, whatever that dream job is, or we can find a position where we can show up authentically as good professional relatives. So these are a few things I invite us to keep in mind as we go through some of the resources that we're able to offer all of our relatives at the American Indian College Fund. So I'm also including this graphic that talks about this idea that I've introduced, this way of being. How do I choose to show up as a good professional relative? And part of that is self-awareness, considering what is important to me, contemplating that, thinking about how my worldview shapes my idea of myself, and how all of these things are important parts of this professional journey. Really, this professional journey is its own ceremony of storytelling. I'm just telling my story in a specific way. Maybe I'm telling my personal story through a personal statement if I'm applying for a particular degree program. Maybe part of my professional journey, part of my storytelling is the way I write my resume, my cover letter. It might even be my elevator speech or my elevator pitch. Sometimes people will refer to that as that kind of like 30-second way that you would define yourself. Do you have a tagline? Is there something that you feel is really important to you? I think over the years, as I mentioned, I have over 30 years of my own professional journey and continue to add to it. I would say for myself, my elevator speech, I would focus on this value of reciprocity. As a person and as a professional relative, reciprocity governs every aspect of my life. And I've chosen to make that an intentional part of my life, probably for the past 6 years or so. That's when I think I really started contemplating, not only what do I want to do when I grow up, or the type of job that I want to have and the way I want to show up in my job, but really thinking about the values that are important to me. This idea of reciprocity, which is more so about sharing, about mutual benefit, about realizing reciprocity has a dual nature. Reciprocity is about giving and receiving in equal measure. I can't be a person who always just gives endlessly. And I can't be a person who always takes endlessly. But if I choose to prioritize reciprocity, and I say it governs my life, how I choose to show up authentically, then that means that I'm being very mindful that I'm giving and receiving in equal measure, in ways that make sense to me, in ways that can be helpful. And again, in ways that can allow me to show up as that good professional relative. And so at the College Fund, and specifically in our area of career readiness and employment, we've prioritized 6 guiding principles, and they're on our website in our little webpage you see listed here. And we call these the 6 R's. We feel that these 6 R's, that you can see these definitions here, I'll skip to a slide that has the definitions a little bit bigger font in a moment. But we strongly believe that these values, these so-called 6 R's, can really help us along our professional journey. They can help us realize that whatever we're doing, if we're in a degree program, if we're at a particular job, we can think about ways that we can intentionally incorporate these values into the work that we do. And so here you see these definitions. And I think as you'll see, a guiding theme in all of these definitions is one of humility. So in terms of the R of respect, recognizing that we have interconnectedness, that we truly all are related. Whether we're talking about in a human to human context, a human to our larger environment, our larger ecosystem, that humility that we are not alone and that what we do affects not just ourselves, but everything and everyone around us. And you can see that throughout. We see that type of humility, that type of compassion, the R of relationship. We know that we need the collective. We need people who are choosing to show up intentionally with kindness and compassion and humility to create these healthy relationships, including in the workplace, including along our professional journey. And so all of these things can really enable us then to uphold this art of redistribution, this mentality that even along my professional journey, it's not just about me. It's not just about, the status that I have or the salary I earn, but how, along with maybe the responsibility I have, along with the salary I earn, that I can choose to cultivate a 7 generations mindset and a legacy that is noted for compassion and humility and this idea of reciprocity. And that takes us into our next slide. One of the reasons that we've really chosen to be so intentional about these 6 R's really comes from the scholars that we support through our scholarships. So annually, I think within this past academic year, fall 2023, spring 2024, we were so blessed at the College Fund to be able to support about 1,200 scholars, or actually maybe even more than that. It might have been close to 1,400 scholars this academic year. And so each fall and each spring, we send out a survey. We have a fall survey, we have a spring survey, and we send this out to our 1,400 scholars. And we ask a few questions. One of the questions that we ask, and it's open-ended, we ask our scholars, what is one of the main reasons for your choice to go to college? And the scholars that we support, they are scholars both at tribal colleges and universities. So any one of the 35 tribal colleges and universities, we say TCUs for short. We also support Native scholars who are at mainstream institutions, sometimes referred to as predominantly white institutions or PWIs. So out of these 1,400 scholars that we support, we ask them, why are you going to college? What is one of your main reasons? And over the past couple of years, overwhelmingly, I think at this point, about 78% of the people that respond to that survey, and we usually have about close to 1,200 people who respond to the survey. We wish it was 100%, but it's pretty good. And the overwhelming majority of that number, about 78%, respond that their main reason for going to school is to give back. And so we take that very seriously. This is not us telling our scholars, this is why you should go to school. You should do this. But we take their words and their feedback seriously, that our scholars are telling us, this is what matters to me. It's important to me to go to school, to earn my credential, to earn my degree, because I want to give back, whatever giving back looks like, to myself, to my family, to my community, to Native people broadly, whatever the case may be. And so this art of reciprocity that on the previous slide, you saw the little short definition. This art of reciprocity, this is where we realize our scholars are choosing to show up in ways that mean something to them. And so because we take that seriously, we've considered, well, what does that look like, let's say, along a professional journey in a professional context? And so these are some of the things that we think apply to that idea of reciprocity. We believe that reciprocity can help inform effective personal storytelling. And really, that's what an interview is. An interview is an opportunity to relate your personal story in a professional context. And so we think that reciprocity can be very helpful as you do that, as you're going along through the job application and interviewing process. And specifically, you can choose to cultivate a reciprocity daily practice that can help inform not only your professional journey, but help guide how you choose to show up as a good professional relative. As part of starting our day, we can think what we want to do that day. What are the goals that we have? What are the things that we have to accomplish? Do we have certain deadlines that we have to meet? Do we have other projects that require many steps for completion? So we can think about what we need to do. We're not going to solve everything today, but there are a few things that we can do. And so as we think about what we want to complete that day, then we can identify what we can do on our own with the resources, with the skills that we have. And then we can also think about where we might need help from colleagues. And I want to emphasize this. When we reach out for help, that is not an admission of stupidity or incompetence or lack of motivation or lack of incentive. When we choose to cultivate this reciprocity daily practice in a professional context, that is allowing us to show up authentically and with humility. We start with our strengths, what we can do on our own. We identify where we need to look to our professional relatives for their wisdom, for their expertise, for their insight. And as we choose to live out the 6 R's, that respect, that responsibility, that redistribution, that relationship, we are actually able to create positive, healthy professional relationships with our colleagues as we consider how we might ask for help, knowing that as part of upholding reciprocity, we are also going to make ourselves available to our colleagues to provide help when they need it. So this is one of the things that we feel can be very beneficial as we think about what showing up as a good professional relative means in a practical way, in a practical context, with intelligence, with insight and expertise, as well as with humility and kindness and compassion. And all of that really helps us mutually together cultivate a sense of resiliency, because we realize that we don't have to do it all. We simply have to do our best and trust that our colleagues are going to choose to show up doing their best as well. And that can also be considered part of this suite of, I'm going to call them indigenous transferable skills. This idea that we are necessary and needed for each other so that mutually we support each other's success. And in a practical context, again, thinking about how does this show up in ways that are actually useful. One of the ways that we offer at the College Fund is this free resource that we call Focus2. And Focus2 is a self-assessment, which actually upholds the R of reflection. I'm going to go back to the previous slide where we have some of those definitions. So one of the 6 R's is the idea of self-examination, thinking about our actions, our responses, how this shapes our personal narratives, our personal stories, our professional journey. So the R of reflection shows up here in this specific career and education decision-making model. So I've listed this particular site. Please feel free to go to it and to create a profile and log in with that access code that you see listed, which is simply College Fund together. But Focus2, this self-assessment model, has a series of quizzes that help you define really what your values are, what matters to you, what's important to you, and also maybe to hone in on what your specific skills are, what your interests are, what might be that dream job for you, what you might consider, as you're thinking about what your professional journey will look like in your future. Are you the type of person who really thrives on being responsible for multiple projects simultaneously? Do you feel that you have a skill in terms of supervisory authority or responsibility? Do you feel that you're able to bring in a diversity of perspectives? Are you able to work with people who have very different personalities? Are you able to help them identify their strengths and bring their best qualities to the forefront? And if that's the case, wonderful. There are definitely resources and jobs available to you that can help you be that effective, let's say, supervisor or boss or director. Maybe you're a person who's like, I really appreciate those skills in other people, but I prefer to work independently. I prefer to work, maybe not so much as part of a collective, as somebody who contributes a specific product, and then I'm on my way. And if that's part of your personality type and that's part of what matters to you, what would give you joy and satisfaction in your job, that's great for you to know, because that can help you hone in and refine your own employment search and think about how you can most effectively show up as a good professional relative. So this is just one of the resources that we offer. And as you go through some of these guided type of self-assessment quizzes, these are just some of the questions that you might consider. Not only in terms of your success and where you might want to work, but also to think about what you know about yourself. Again, that are a reflection of self-examination. What do you know about yourself, and let's say whatever profession you're interested in, and it might be more than one, that can enable you to maybe find a job in that industry. If you're interested in a certain profession, is that profession available? Are there job vacancies near you? If not, are you willing to maybe relocate? You know, it may not be relocating forever, but for a certain period of time. Are you open, let's say, to a hybrid work situation? Maybe you're not a person who needs to be in an office in a specific location. Maybe you can work remotely, or maybe you can spend a couple days a week in an office setting and other time remote working, whatever the case may be. But this Focus2 self-assessment, and again, enables you to consider those 6 R's that I mentioned previously and apply them in a practical way as you consider what is important to you, what your values are, what types of jobs and employment types and employment models might allow you to best showcase your skills, your talents, and your wisdom. Another free tool that we're able to offer at the College Fund is this platform called CONNECT. And as you can see from the definition, CONNECT is this virtual mentoring network. So let's say once you finish going through the Focus2 self-assessment exercises, now you feel maybe really confident that you've identified areas that you're interested in. You've identified some of your specific professional strengths. And with that, now you maybe feel that you have some more clarity about what you might want to do. With that, now I think you're prepared to then use our virtual mentoring network to help you build and sustain professional relationships. So the CONNECT virtual mentoring network includes a number of people who are working professionals in various fields, anything from law to health, to education, to engineering, to technology, and so on. These are working professionals who themselves have created accounts on this virtual mentoring network platform and who are anxious and excited about connecting with people, maybe who are earning a credential or a degree, or who are looking to continue to grow in their particular profession along the professional journey. And they are wanting and willing to serve as professional mentors. You can think of them as, I'm going to say, more experienced professional relatives, where they can provide insight into, some of the things they experienced in their particular industry, maybe things that they would have done differently that might have made their path a little bit easier, or maybe things that were really effective. And they might offer, hey, this is what I did and it seemed to work for me. Hopefully it's helpful for you. So we strongly encourage people to use this opportunity to connect with people who are in various stages of their professional journey, to learn from each other, to share insight, to share skills, to share resources. This virtual mentoring network is also an opportunity for people who join to explore various internships and job opportunities that are posted. And again, as I mentioned, to connect with individuals who can provide that type of firsthand experience and guidance, and who are willing and wanting to be helpful in that way to other professional relatives. And in order to do that, in order to really be able to meaningfully connect with professional relatives and apply for those internships and jobs, we have yet another free resource, which is our resume builder. And this resume builder, once again, there's the website address. You do need to create an account. It allows people to quickly create a resume using several templates that we have within this platform. And so for those individuals who may be starting out at the very beginning of their professional journey, as well as for people who have already have, work history, we feel that this resume builder can be very helpful in helping you showcase your strengths, your talents, including strengths and talents that you might have refined, not necessarily just in a job, but let's say you've been very active in your community. Let's say you have participated in even certain activities of a ceremonial nature that require a lot of cooperation and coordination. One example that comes to mind, I had opportunity to chat with a younger person, a younger professional relative who was beginning her professional journey and shared that she was concerned that she didn't have as much experience perhaps as other people. And so we chatted about that. And in the course of our chat, this particular person comes from a community in the Pacific Northwest. Many communities in the Pacific Northwest have an ongoing tradition that is ceremonial based out of creating canoes and participating in canoe journeys. And so this particular person, younger professional relative, was part of a family and a community that was noted for having significant responsibility in creating ocean-going canoes for canoe journey. And there are a lot of responsibilities associated with that, some ceremonial nature, some just in terms of hard work, to ensure that that vessel is safe and can accomplish what needs to be accomplished during canoe journey. And so as this person was sharing with me, all the different moving parts and their involvement in all the different aspects of creating this canoe, they came to realize that in fact, they had so many more skills than they had previously given themselves credit for. So that they had skills of teamwork, effective communication, collaboration, conflict management. And so that person was then able to include that, on their resume as something that, again, speaks to their ability to show up as a good professional relative, that these are all transferable skills: conflict resolution, effective communication, collaboration, time management, project management. So again, at whatever phase we are in our professional journeys, it's important for us to engage in that art of reflection that I mentioned previously, that self-examination, and to also give ourselves credit, not just for things that have been maybe acquired in a specific employment or job workspace, but to also acknowledge the other skills, I'm going to call them indigenous transferable skills, that maybe we've developed in other contexts as well. And also on our website, we have a link to all the tribal colleges and universities, all 35 that are currently operating across the country. So realizing that, you may already be enrolled in a degree program or a credential program at an institution, but also to be aware that the TCUs, or tribal colleges and universities, TCUs for short, that they offer many opportunities to build your professional skill set, whether that's a credential, whether that's a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. If you're already at a tribal college or university, maybe you're already earning a 2-year degree and you're thinking you might want to go on to earn a 4-year degree. There are several institutions that offer that. So we encourage you to, again, look at our website, to have fun exploring what the various TCUs have to offer you as you continue along your professional journey. There are also a number of other institutions across the country. They're not tribal colleges, but they have various degree programs that are maybe focused for Native scholars, Native students. And these are just a handful that you see on this map, and there are many more that continue to grow. So for instance, the University of North Dakota has a specific program called InMed, or Indians into Medicine, that is focused on encouraging Indigenous scholars to complete a 4-year degree and then to consider what they're going to do after that within the health professions, whether that is nursing, whether that is becoming a nurse practitioner, whether that is becoming an MD, going on to medical school, whatever the case may be. There are other programs that are devoted to tribal governance and management. There's an excellent program at the University of Minnesota devoted to that. And there are still other programs that are devoted to undergraduate and graduate studies in American Indian Studies or Native American Studies. And so those are just some examples of the programs that are available throughout the country at various institutions that are not tribal colleges and universities, but that do seek to offer both Native and non-Native people opportunities to earn degrees that focus on specific issues and specific concept and specific knowledge that pertains to Native nations. And we have even more free tools and resources. So this first link that you see, Native Pathways, College Going Guidebook, that could be very helpful to have handy as you're going through that Focus2 self-assessment tool that I mentioned previously. So we have a lot of information, and this doesn't just come from us. We have some of our scholars that we've been able to previously support through scholarship funding, who have generously and graciously shared their own experiences, written about some of the challenges and their successes that they were able to accomplish as they considered going to college and what that meant for them. And then we also have another resource, our Career Pathways Guidebook. And again, this Career Pathways Guidebook can be very, very helpful to have handy as you're trying to connect virtually with a mentor on our Connect platform, to think about, some of the questions that you might consider asking a professional who's already working in the field that you might be interested in. And then this slide, I think it does a really good, people say a picture's worth 1,000 words. This picture, as you can see, and this whole discussion around this idea of professional journey and professional relatives, I think really captures the whole point of what it means to consider the 6 R's values that I mentioned previously. Here in this picture, you see depicted some of our college fund staff, along with some of the scholars that we are so proud and privileged to support with scholarship funding, as well as with some of our professional relatives that we at the College Fund have been able to connect with. This particular photo is with some of our professional relatives who work at the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida. And as you can see, a range of experience, of age, of ethnicity, of lived background is encapsulated in this one photo. And thinking about what that means in terms of this professional journey is realizing that we are all able to show up as our authentic selves with our unique lived experiences and perspectives to help co-create an environment that is kind, that is respectful, that is based on reciprocity, and that it enables us to powerfully and effectively show up as good relatives. I also wanted to include ways that you can connect with us. So these are all the various ways that we have presence on different social media platforms. So if you haven't yet been able to connect with us, I strongly encourage you to do so. And within our career readiness and employment staff, we have various areas, and there are 3 of us who are part of that specific area. And here are our names and contact information. And so with this, since we're such a small group, I'd like to invite everyone. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And feel free to unmute yourselves or to use the chat if you have any questions or any feedback that you would like to provide. I had to take a sip of water. And thank you. I see somebody already typed in a question into the question and answer portion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy that into the chat so that we can all see it. And I hope I'm able to do that. Might not be able to, but so then I'm just going to read this out if I'm not able to do it. Hopefully you can all see this in the chat. And thank you for this question. What advice do you have for making sure that my professional journey does not disregard my Indigenous background? Going to a mainstream college, I felt pushed to be more mainstream. What steps do I take to push back and make room for who I am culturally as well? Thank you so much for that question. That's really beautiful. So in terms of ensuring that your professional journey doesn't disregard your Indigenous background, I will share just a little bit of my own struggle with that. So I earned undergraduate and graduate degrees in environmental science at predominantly white institutions. I have a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Resource Sciences with a hydrobiology focus from the University of California, Davis. And I have a professional science master's degree in environmental science with a focus on water resources management from the University of Idaho. I typically, especially as an undergraduate student, was the only Indigenous woman in my particular degree program. And then as a graduate student, I was one of 2 Indigenous people within my degree program. So I can appreciate this question. How can I show up as my authentic self in ways that, affirm who I am as an Indigenous person, that also still allow me to, let's say, learn and effectively contribute, in my case, to environmental science, and that I don't feel that I have to hide who I am, or that, I don't feel that who I am is somehow disrespected. And I will be honest, it is a challenge. I think depending on what type of field you go into, there are going to be different types of challenges. For myself, I will say the way I was able to cultivate resiliency is to first think about why I chose to be in that field. And for myself, it was because a person who I value and love told me that she thought I would be good at that. And that was my maternal grandmother, whose formal education ended at 3rd grade. But listening to her stories, being raised by her along with my parents, just really affirmed to me why I was in the field that I was in, even though, yes, I personally encountered instances of racism and sexism and misogyny, but realizing that although I experienced those things as an individual, in another context, it wasn't just about me, it was about the responsibility that I hold as a relative, not just a professional relative, but a relative period, to my family, to my community, and thinking of ways that I can intentionally create community, even in the midst of some of those really challenging circumstances. For myself, especially as an undergraduate student, I chose to minor in Native American Studies. I know that not all colleges and universities have Native American Studies courses or departments. I'm very grateful that I attended an institution that did. And that's really, I think, how I was able to ground myself. Not only that, I was able to talk to other people outside of my major, just other Native people, period, and think about and ask them questions of, how do you stay centered? How do you stay connected? How do you not get overwhelmed? What happens when you do get overwhelmed? What happens when you might experience burnout? What happens when you might feel that who you are as an individual is somehow being minimized and it's not okay? And I think really surrounding yourself with people, and sometimes maybe it doesn't feel like you're surrounded. It might just be the one person or 2, but someone with whom you can have very intentional conversations about, for instance, the idea of reciprocity, the idea of reflection, the idea of respect and responsibility for self and others. I think that can also be very helpful. I'm not going to pretend that it solves those challenges, especially when you might encounter situations and circumstances that seem to want to minimize who you are as an Indigenous person. But I think, again, reminding ourselves that all of our own, not only our own individual lived experiences, but those experiences of our relatives, generations before us, the legacy that they left and the responsibility that we have to uphold the legacy now and think about the legacy that we leave for our future, I feel that that can help recenter us and reground us and hopefully re-inspire us. And through the course of that process, help us create and cultivate a sense of resiliency. So it's not a one-word response for sure. It's not an easy answer for sure. But I also do want to encourage you to please connect with us on the Connect Virtual Mentoring Network, where you will encounter people who are there to serve as supportive peers, as supportive mentors, where even if you're not getting the support that you feel that you need and want in your particular institution or your department in your degree program, that there are definitely people who are there, who are available, who want to show up as a good professional relative, and who are excited about your success. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. Let's see, we have a couple other questions as well in the chat. Let's see. Thank you for letting us know about, some being that student who's high achieving. Thank you. Scholarships and grants that I recommend for a student. Well, I encourage student scholars, first of all, please apply to the American Indian College Fund. We do have a deadline, an upcoming deadline, May 31st. So just in a couple more weeks, less than 2 weeks. So please do submit a scholarship application. And you can find that just on our collegefund.org website. I am going to put in the chat specifically where you can find that information. And just bear with me as I get to that. You do need to create an account. And I'm putting that in the chat. So please, please encourage this individual to apply. Again, there is a May 31st deadline. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. And then beyond that, I mean, there are a number of free scholarship search engines, FastWeb being one of them. But beyond just, scholarships that are for Indigenous people, looking at scholarships that are specific to the discipline. So if there is a specific major that the person is in, and specific interests, there are scholarships, you'd be surprised. There are scholarships for people who love to play chess, who ice skate, who play tennis, who are interested in, let's say, studying abroad. There are a number of opportunities. So I encourage people to not just to limit ourselves, but to engage in that art of reflection, to think of all the ways that you show up as a full human, your values, your interests, your hobbies, your passions, your dreams, and to really use, Google, whatever search engine you prefer, as your friend. And throughout that process, to think about how you choose to show up with authenticity. When you consider how you show up as your authentic self, that translates, whether it's in a cover letter, a scholarship application, a statement of purpose, whatever the case may be. For myself, I share the story because it's true that my inspiration for my own professional journey, especially when it came to the degrees I earned, is because of the teachings of my maternal grandmother and how she inspired me to consider my responsibility to my relatives, not just human relatives, but to my relatives' water, and how I have a responsibility to water. And that if I don't take care of water, then water won't take care of me. And I know that maybe, doesn't sound very scientific, but in fact, we know the importance of potable water. We know the importance when we have water that becomes polluted. We know the importance of ensuring that there is adequate drinking water. What happens when there isn't? We see that is an ongoing situation with our relatives in Flint, Michigan, with concerns around any type of potential threat to water. So in fact, when I reflect on my own values and what shaped what I chose to study, it really does come from that, very much that Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous values-based place. In my case, in a science context. So I encourage all of us, as we contemplate what matters to us, as we think about how we want to show up as a good professional relative, to think of all the experiences, the personal history, the family history, the tribal history that has shaped who we are and where we are now, where we find ourselves now in this contemporary context. So thank you for that. Let's see, what else? We have people who are doing Indigenous people studies. That's wonderful. Cal Poly Humboldt, I love that campus. I've visited it several times. And thank you for those kind words in this chat as well. Yes, professional journey is personal. You know, I know sometimes it can be challenging. All of us can get caught up in maybe the concern about status, the very real concern about the ability to pay our bills, you know, to earn enough so that we can have a standard of living that can support us, that can provide housing security, food security, and beyond that, that can allow us to show up and to really do amazing things with the talents that we have, the skills that we have. And I also invite all of us to consider, you know, the various ways we can continue to grow. That's the good news about this professional journey, is that however it plays out, is it a straight line? Does it meander and twist and turn like mine has? I joke that at times I feel that my professional journey, if I think of it as a road, it is not a super highway with 6 lanes in both directions. At times, mine has been a dirt road full of gravel, full of potholes. There have been times along my professional journey I have washed out and felt like I was going to tumble down a cliff. And all of that is to say that as we go along, you know, as we continue to decide how we want to show up in the world, that there are ways to do that, that can affirm us, that can encourage us, that can inspire us, and that we have other people that we can call upon, that we do not have to pretend to be an expert, that all we have to do is show up with humility and authenticity, and trust that our colleagues are going to do the same, that they will reciprocate. So thank you so much, everyone, for participation. Thank you for your time and your attention. And I hope that you're able to make use of these resources. Again, all of these resources that I was able to go over are entirely free. They are open to anyone, not just Native scholars or Native people. They are a free resource to anybody. So if you look at some of those guidebooks, if you look at some of those other platforms that I mentioned, Focus tool, that self-assessment decision-making tool, if you look at the Connect platform, ways for you to connect with professionals and with colleagues who are already working in that field, please do feel free to use all of those resources that are available to you. Thank you all so much. If there are any other questions, please feel free to, you can unmute yourself, you can turn on your camera, you can type it in the chat, but I'll be here for a few more minutes. If you need to go, thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.